Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like Mac Voices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for MacVoices Magazine on Flipboard. Hi, I'm Chuck Joyner, and this is Mac Voices, the talk of the Apple community. Folks, we're going to talk about web design and redesign today, and keep your hands off that playback control because it's relevant to you. Because we're going to talk to Adam Engst of TidBITS and the TidBITS Content Network about the redesign of their site. Adam, it's great to talk to you about this because I think this is particularly interesting from both not only the back end, the owner perspective, but also from the reader perspective.
Well, and it is. It's always good to talk about this stuff because I think that people don't often realize why a lot of these redesigns are done. We do certainly see a lot of things whack Apple for this sometimes, where it just seems like they're changing things for the sake of changing them. But in this case, we had a lot of reasons why we did it, some of which are business reasons and some of which were just, you gotta stay with the times to a certain extent or you become utterly irrelevant.
Yeah, and boy, there's an avenue I'd like to go down there, but I'm not going to, at least not right now. Maybe later.
So were you irrelevant?
Yeah,
Let me think about that.
Yeah, well, there is a particular audience out there I'd like to ask, have you looked at your website recently? Are you relevant? But doing this kind of design, Adam, I mean, this isn't just a matter of changing a theme or, slapping on a new coat of paint or anything, especially the way you did it, because you kind of did a full ground up, total redesign of pretty much everything.
So the magician trick where the magician pulls the tablecloth out from under a fully set table.
Yeah.
So my analogy is that we didn't so much as pull the tablecloth out as we rebuilt the table from scratch while a dinner party was in play.
Okay.
So, it's just like, trying to get everything. And, we didn't break anything horribly. But, there were some rough spots for a day or two there. And, I think really when we talk about redesign, people do sort of think, oh, they made it look different. Yes, it looks different. But in our case, so the terminology we've been using actually is internet infrastructure transition. And the reason is we didn't just change the look of it. We changed every bit of server behind the scenes. So it's a new web server, it's a new content management system, it's a new web host, it's a new mailing list system, it's a new mailing list host, it's a new commenting system. Everything is different. And that's good in a lot of ways, but it's also hard. And it's hard, frankly, on me. It's been a really long month or two. And month or two, meaning when we've actually been really dealing with it, it's been 6 to 7 months of actual work. And frankly, it's been hard on readers. I mean, and I feel badly about that. That I've had to make people do things like reset passwords and figure out new systems and all that they would have preferred not to do. And I'm sorry. But on the other hand, not everything can stay the same forever. It just can't.
No, and I think folks now, it's a point that I make at the office frequently, that the people that say, well, we don't want to change anything. We just want to use exactly what we've been using. You know what? Things are changing behind the scenes for you. I mean, the software vendors are changing things. So the software you're using now isn't what you were using 2 years ago, and it's not going to be what you're using 2 years from now, even if it's named the same software by the same company. There's going to be changes that kind of sneak up on you.
Absolutely. And I mean, give you a very small example. In Apple Mail in, I think, El Capitan and iOS 9, forgetting which one went with which, we had table of contents links at the top of our issues. So you could click link and go down to the Apple broke that. Just broke it. Never fixed it in that version of Mail. It did get fixed later on, sort of at least, and it really does work. Seemingly work now in most places. But that's a case of we got a lot of complaints when that happened, and there was nothing we could do about it because it was out of our control. The world had changed. And we're still dealing with that one because we're not, we actually do prefer to give people the full text of the issues, because people who want an email usually don't want to go out somewhere else to read it. But that said, and that's another really big one, and this was actually one of the major reasons for the transition and the redesign, is that Google has for a while now been deprecating websites that do not have mobile versions. So our previous site, not in the slightest bit mobile friendly. It was actually kind of mobile unfriendly. It really, really didn't like being used on an iPhone. And there was nothing I could do about that. It was an old system. It had been designed in a certain way. There was no easy way to rebuild it for mobile or anything like that. It would have been stuff that had been just kind of jury rigged and patched on top of other stuff that wasn't designed for it. And so literally to get back into Google appropriately, we needed a fully responsive mobile site that looks good on every platform. And even just a week or so ago, Google said that they're going to start doing mobile-first indexing. So if you want to be crawled quickly and all of that, your mobile site's what's going to be used first. And they're saying that if you have a desktop-only site, you won't disappear entirely. But really, the writing's on the wall. This is the way that Google sees the world going, and even if it's not true for you, TidBITS, in fact, I forget what the numbers are, like 20% of our readers read TidBITS on mobile devices. And that's actually relatively low, but, for overall trends, but that doesn't matter. Google doesn't care. They're going to treat us like everyone else. So, all sorts of things along those lines. Apple News. We can now do the Apple News format. So TidBITS is a full-fledged player in Apple News now, as opposed to kind of having a janky RSS feed that sort of worked. So
sort of worked.
Right. It mostly looked a little weak. So there's a lot of things like that where, we couldn't keep up with where the world was going. And, as I said, it really felt like we were becoming more and more irrelevant, because whether or not the content was good, a lot of people couldn't get past the fact that it looked like it had been designed in 2006. Which it probably was. Yeah. I haven't gone back and actually looked at my exact dates and everything, but yeah, it was a 10-year-old site, and that's just way too long.
Yeah, and listen, there's nothing wrong with it being a 10-year-old site, but 10-year-old sites are 10 years old, and they were built based on standards, broadband speeds,
technologies, everything.
Yes.
And and actually, like I said, the people I feel badly about, because in fact, it's the people who haven't moved on. So, yeah, you know what? TidBITS doesn't look so good in Eudora and Snow Leopard anymore. If you're using an 11-year-old email client in a 6-year-old operating system, sorry.
Yeah.
There's, I'm sorry. I really do feel badly, but the fact is, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do anything about it. It's just not,
Well, Adam, that would be like you trying to build or justify driving a Model T on,
Sure.
the highway. I'm sorry, but it's just
you can do it. But it's, but you have to take into account what's, that not everything is going to be the same. And so that's one of the groups that we had to lose, was the people who really liked our text only version of the email newsletter, which I will say looked truly awful if you tried to read it in any modern email client, not in straight text, because it had hard wrapped lines. It was designed, the hard wrapped lines were designed literally for the 1990s, the early 90s. Back when we worried about things like 32 kilobyte email gateways, when issues had to be under 32K or they wouldn't transfer from the internet to AOL or to CompuServe or whatever, where those limits were there. And so, and everyone had these really limited systems, and we had to do really a lot of work to make those text versions look good. And, again, after decades of doing that, not so much anymore.
So One thing that I think made this transition difficult, and I first of all I applaud you for it, but second, it's very obvious that you would want to do it, is that you have an incredible backlog or back catalog, I should say, of articles and information.
Yeah.
And I've been through web projects where at some point you just say, look, bring the hammer down and we're going to start fresh, or we're just only going to go back, a few months or even a year and just move forward. And if that would have been an incredible waste with TidBITS, but at the same time, that also introduces its own set of problems, I'm sure.
It does, although not as many as you'd think. So we have 17,000 articles dating back 28 years. But for the most part, those imported pretty well. And we had a decent system before. We've done we've done good stuff in terms of having those be usable all along. So that wasn't terrible. The thing that we haven't done yet, but which I am scared silly about, but I still want to do, is we have literally 20 years of TidBITS talk discussions, and I want to import all those into our new system.
Wow.
Yeah. So Discourse is we're using for commenting and discussions, and it's a truly cool system. It has a lot of neat things, but it actually would it's designed around relatively high volume web-based discussions, but it has good searching and all of that, and it would be kind of neat to be able to put 20 years of conversation into it. That assumes that we can get that to look halfway decent or whatnot. I actually was grepping through massive text files of these archives, like removing all the email signatures, because every message had the same signature from the list, and you don't want to have that in every message you import. So, right. So a lot of stupid little things like that. And as I say, we haven't done that yet. We don't know if it's possible. It's theoretically possible, but it may just look terrible, or it may do horrible things to our performance or whatever. So, we'll see.
I won't. The performance thing, obviously, you don't want to damage the performance of something you just built, but is appearance for legacy material like that, is appearance that important to you that we're not going to go more than that, but literally seeing the same email signature, list signature in every message, it's just unnecessary. Yeah.
Right. I can go through. It turned out to be a little harder than I had thought. We did change signatures, many times over the years, and then once particularly HTML mail became commonplace, just all the tags that got worked into those signatures sometimes made it impossible to get them out. So, but it was one of those things where it cleaned up the content a whole lot. Now we can try and see if it actually looks halfway decent once we bring it in. And we'll see. As I said, no promises, but it is something that would be nice. And no previous system has actually ever had that. TidBITS Talk has always been a mailing list, and we've never had a full archive of everything going back. Because we've changed systems at least LetterRip, Web Crossing, at least 3 times. So, as stuff changes, every time you switch to a new system, you can't do the same things that you did in the old system. And so our first mailing list server was something called LetterRip, which was great, but only worked under Classic. So, literally didn't work under, no, you got to take it back. There was an OS 10 version later on, but we were running on an SE30. And so there were some issues there. And then we moved to something called Web Crossing, which was a big kind of battleship content management discussion system all built into one, which was great, but that ran on an Xserve. When we went to a virtual private server, we didn't have Web Crossing, so we switched to Mailman, which is an open source mailing list software. And, that again worked, but had its own issues, didn't have very good archives, for instance. And so we lost all the previous, sort of each upgrade, we'd lost the previous set. We had them all, had all the content, but we couldn't bring it over easily. So in this case, we have a chance to bring it all in again.
I want to go back to what you were talking about with the TidBITS, the email newsletter or email list, because we started out by saying this is a website redesign, and somehow we transitioned into the mail thing. So is that in your system? Are those two completely tied together, or are they separate and they just happen to look alike? Or how's that? working on the back end?
It sort of depends how you see it, I guess. So we're using WordPress now. And if you, in fact, go to the website, there's a top-level navigation item for weekly issues. And if you click one of those, you will see what's in the issue. And the issue is what we put together every Monday from the previous week's content and mail that out. Because people think of tidbits in issue format, that's why we have sort of provide that look. And if there's actually a little twiddle to be able to just see the summaries or to see the full content of each article in the issue. And if you see full content, that's exactly what you're getting in email. And so, we build the issue in WordPress, and then I push a button that basically sends it to our mailing service called SendGrid, and SendGrid then sends it out to 24,000 people. So in that sense, they are very much the same. It is the same raw information in each place. You just have to do a few different things in email to make sure it still looks halfway decent. But the one thing that's actually very cool, most people wouldn't probably notice this or care, but SendGrid, previously when the mailing list system was our own database-driven, homebrew thing, and sending out from our virtual private server running SendMail, it took several hours to distribute tidbits because it's going to 20 plus thousand people, and that's a lot of mail to push out. However, SendGrid, because this is the service that they provide, it's shockingly fast. I literally do not think it's any slower to send to 24,000 people than to send myself a test message. I mean, I push the send button and other people on tidbits are like, oh, got the issue. Oh, seriously? You sent 24,000 messages nominally from the same IP address, because we have a dedicated IP address for them now, in minutes? I can't wrap my head around that. It's just kind of nuts. But that's the service they provide, and it's not cheap either. But we may be looking at switching to something that's a whole lot cheaper in the future. But for the moment, we just need to get something that works and pushes out the email. And and it provides also other great stuff like, anyone says, I'm not getting the issue, I can type their email address into an activity monitor and say, well, we sent it to you and it was received at your ISP, and so it's in your local spam, probably in your local spam filter, versus, looks your ISP marked that as spam, so you'll have to complain to them. And all the other troubleshooting, which before I could sort of figure out, but I had to get in and grep through mail logs to be able to kind of parse together what had happened. And this is great. I mean, literally, I can take a screenshot saying, "Oh, look, see, this is what happened," and send it to them, as opposed to, okay, it looks like the previous issue went through fine, but this one, and I'm trying to suss out each item in the log, appropriately. So that's been a real win.
This reminds me of a discussion we've had here before. Way back when, I'm not going to call any times or dates, but you wrote the Internet Starter Kit.
1993. There you go.
Okay, well, there you go. So back then, I mean, you could sort of wrap your head around everything. And I think what you just described is where we are now, that you almost have to go to these specialized services because everything has become so sophisticated and so specialized that there's no way for you to roll your own intelligently and effectively.
It is not possible. And even more so than that. I mean, yes, when I wrote Internet Starter Kit for Macintosh, the very first edition, I really did understand everything that there was to do with the internet on the Macintosh. And that the percentage of my knowledge as an amount of the whole has been dropping radically ever since, even as I learned vastly more stuff. And I can do HTML, CSS. I understand at least the basics of running servers, et cetera, et cetera. Fact is, I can't do this anymore. I just can't. I do not have the skills. I don't have the time to learn them. And we're working with a guy named Eli Van Zoren, who's a web developer, and that's his job. He knows how to do all this stuff, and he's doing front end programming and back end programming, and hooking all the database stuff up and tying in all the external services. And he's really, really good at that. And I've actually complained at him about this. I was like, this isn't fair. I can't do this. It used to be that I could put up a website and I kind of know what I wanted to do. And sometimes that's really easy where he flips a switch, and other times it's like, okay, I got to go code something. And so you never know what's easy and what's hard.
Yeah. How about from a security standpoint? Because if you've gone to WordPress, I mean, you're on the most popular publishing platform on the web.
Yeah.
That also means it's the biggest target. And I have some experience with WordPress issues. And I want to be very clear here, through no fault of WordPress itself. It's just the nature of having that kind of software and having people beat on it all day to see if they can find a way in. Have you had any issues, or was that a concern?
So it is a concern, absolutely. And one of the reasons, in fact, why I feel badly about making people do things like reset their passwords is our passwords previously were all encrypted. They were hashed in a one-way hash that could not be recreated. So I could bring over all the accounts for 29,000 people or whatever it was, but we could not bring over the passwords. And so the only way to get your password was to reset it. But at that point, again, we know that the passwords are nice and strong and all that. And again, Eli being able to, knowing this system and being a programmer, was also being very careful to follow best practices for WordPress security. So there's a few things about our installation which are, I wouldn't say unusual, but they're non-standard anyway, because that's more secure. If you don't, like you're not at normal URLs, for instance. There's certain URLs that get hammered on. So we're pretty confident that way. And the web host we use, Arcus Tech, they're kind of interesting. For the most part, you don't actually do stuff there yourself. You ask them to do it for you. And I like that because that means I don't have to worry about doing it wrong. That, like if I'm setting up an SSL certificate, again, I can do it. I have done it, but it's not something I do every day. It's something I do once a year or once every 3 months or whatever. And it takes me a while, and I worry that I get it wrong, and maybe I do get it wrong. I don't know. They know that it's done right. So all that said, the one security problem that we have had is with WordPress. As soon as you bring up a public WordPress site, people will try to create accounts on it. So it took us, and I actually had to get Eli to install a plugin because of, again, having a development system. I can't just install a plugin, or I can, but the next time he deploys the entire system, it overwrites any local changes I've made to the code and things like that. So I had to get him to install a plugin, which just let us sort the user list by date. WordPress doesn't do that by default. Not a problem. You get use free plugin, does it just fine. And the reason for that is because I had noticed we're getting a lot of bounces from addresses that didn't make sense. And when I went and looked, indeed, there were a bunch of people who had signed up, really a bot that had signed up a bunch of accounts, and they weren't real in some way, but it had just hammered us. And so by doing that and looking through, I realized that we had in the couple of days before we added a reCAPTCHA thing, to make sure you're a human, and signing up for an account, we had 400 or 500 spurious accounts created. This wasn't little. This was a lot of spurious accounts.
Wow.
And they were easy to find. Many of them were easy to find because they all came from, some .website domain as opposed to, .com or something like that. Or there were a bunch of Russian ones. So I just searched on .ru. And, any .ru. If anyone subscribed to TidBITS from a .ru account in the last 2 weeks, I'm sorry. You've been deleted. They all looked bogus. And so I was like, fine, blowing them all away. And so, but that's the kind of thing where, we didn't quite realize the extent to which you've really got to lock down your user account process, or people will take advantage of it. And it's not even clear what they can do to you, but they've got an account in the system then. So, we want to prevent that. And, and as I said, I felt badly because the reCAPTCHA is that one where we have the invisible option. So it tries to just tell if you're a person by how you're moving the mouse and whatever, I guess, I don't know. But then if that doesn't work, it shows you that grid of pictures and you have to find all the ones with a car in them or a traffic sign. I cannot tell you how much I hate those. Yeah. I hate them with a burning passion because I'm one of those people who overthinks it. So if it's asking me to find traffic signs and there's a post, I don't know whether it means that's a traffic sign or not. It's supposed to hold the traffic sign, and there's a tiny little bit of the traffic sign, so I can tell. I don't know. So as that, it's truck. He wants to find the cars, but is a truck a car? I don't know. and I mean, I get it wrong half the time. And so I said, I apologize to anyone who was irritated by that on our site. I wish they could avoid it, but to the tune of 400 or 500 accounts in a few days, I think we will live with that annoyance.
That's another choice that you had to make. There are features, I'm sure, that you would love to have had, but they were either burdensome, or they conflicted with something else, or they even presented security issues. And I guess, and knowing you and Tanya, and the care with which you prepare pretty much everything, that had to be a hard set of decisions to make.
Yeah, and I mean, so probably the big thing that I feel badly about is losing the text version and losing some of we used to have what we called announcement versions and the full text versions. And we're like, we can't do this anymore. We've got to have a single issue. And so if you really liked getting, the announcement version, particularly in text mode, sorry, it's not there anymore. And part of the reason for that was from the user experience perspective. If we gave you all of these options, if you had 4 options for subscribing to TidBITS, HTML and text in both announcement and full text, it was just confusing. And people didn't know what they were subscribed to. They didn't know what the options were. They never figured out what the options were. So, I mean, I'd say something about, did you know we have an HTML version? And I'm like, we've had it for 10 years, and people wouldn't have known that. And they'd been putting up with horrible display of the text version in their iPhone client. So, that's the kind of thing where it's like, we're going to have one version, and and I realize it's not ideal for everybody. And, maybe after things settle down, we'll look into bringing back an announcement only version, but it's not going to be plain text. It's just not. Again, plain text, people think plain text is easy because, formatting's hard. No, you format plain text. Plain text is one of those things where you have to be careful about the position of every character. And yeah, most of the time it's not a big deal, but there are spots where we're like, fiddling with the spacing between bullet list items because it looks stupid otherwise. That's the kind of stuff that you have to deal with when you do plain text. Plain text is actually hard and to do well. And we did it for a long time, and we had systems that made it as easy as possible and whatnot, but all that went away. Completely new server, not going to put time, effort, and, lots of money into developing that again.
I mean, again, those are choices you have to make. Any of us that have ever run a website have had to make choices. And sometimes you have to cut things off and say, sorry, that's the way it used to be. Now this is the way it is. And, if you don't like it, I apologize, but, we got to move on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And, I mean, on the flip side of, I've had to learn a vast amount of stuff, and it's been a ton of work. It's also kind of fun. I mean, I knew the old system inside and out. I knew nothing could ever be changed. It was written in Perl by Glenn Fleischman years ago. He didn't even remember what he did, so he couldn't change it. It was brittle as all get out. If you did exactly what it wanted, you were fine. It would do exactly what if you wanted to change something, too bad. Yeah, you just basically couldn't do that. I could change a word here and there, but that's about it. And so it was just too hard to, and you couldn't imagine doing anything new. Now we're putting more effort into like finding featured images, photos. So the tops of the articles look nice. Does that make it a better article? No, it's the same text that would have been there before, but it makes us look like we're actually a modern, relevant publication, as opposed to some throwback to the early 2000s.
That's exactly where I was going to go next. I swear, you're reading my mind, because the new TidBITS is very graphically rich, and that was something that, before, if we got a screenshot of something, we were kind of lucky, and that was about it.
Oh, and I can't tell you how much I hated those screenshots. So here's the problem. We were using Markdown before. Markdown is brilliant for a lot of reasons. I mean, it's based in part on the structure enhanced text stuff that we'd been using for many years before Markdown existed, cText. And what Markdown does is you put an image URL in, right? So you upload your image to the web server via FTP, and then you put a link to it in the text, and then your web server, when the your content management system knows Markdown, it can render that. So it puts the image in the place right there. So here's the problem: how big should the image be? Seriously, how big should it be?
It depends on what device you're viewing it on.
Nope. The answer is it will be the size that it is, and at full column width, because there's no choice.
Oh, excuse me. In the old system.
In the old system,
I'm
right.
sorry.
In Markdown in general,
right?
You have no control over image size, and so one of the things that I've long hated is if you take a screenshot of something fairly tight, and then it gets basically blown up to your full column width because that's the size of the image, you've got this huge, you're reading along in perfectly nice 10 point, 12 point, 16 point, whatever text, and then you get 72 point text seemingly in the screenshot because it was just a tight screenshot. It might have been a perfect screenshot to illustrate what you want, but I have this. I've come to this belief. I don't know. I've never seen this before anywhere else. Is that the text in your screenshots should be roughly the size of the text in your article. If it's not, it looks funny. You're zoomed in. Or, it's actually not. It's the other way around. Like you take a full screen screenshot and then you shrink it down to fit in your text column. The text is much smaller, but that's sort of okay because we're used to the concept of thumbnails, right? We understand that this is sort of a placeholder, and it can't possibly. You couldn't possibly read it because it's something. It's representing something much larger. But when it's small and it's been blown up to fit this column width, it looks stupid. It just looks stupid. And so one of the things that we can do now is it's WordPress. We can just resize the damn image by dragging a handle, in the editor, like you're supposed to be able to. This is, these are real computers, for God's sakes. We do not have to code everything or put up with text-based systems that have no flexibility whatsoever. We have the ability in computers in the modern world to resize a graphic. And we can even do things in WordPress like it will put in the right size graphic for the screens. It can flip graphics around. One really cool thing we did, we built our own ad management system. I can talk more about that because of why we built it, to avoid repulsive trackers. But the thing that we did is we discovered that we were using this leaderboard size, 728 by 90. And that looks great on the desktop. It looks great on the iPad. It looks great on the iPhone in landscape mode. It looks horrible in the iPhone in portrait mode because it's just too small, right? It has to keep shrinking it. So you can't, start this down so you can't read the text. So what we did through the miracles of CSS media queries, we can say if your screen size is now under 600 pixels, switch to this other graphic. And so I'm actually building the ads in two sizes, the 728 by 90 and 320 by 100, which is just a little bit bigger and it's a little bit different dimensions. And it looks much, much better on the iPhone in portrait mode. And so that's something where, again, when you're writing in Markdown, you can't do anything like that. Not possible. But in theory, we can do all sorts of neat stuff with this. And I'm still learning what we can do. And, having people say something like, oh, yeah, I can do that, ask my developer and like, yeah, we can do that. And, fix it. And, sometimes it's really simple. Sometimes it's really hard. But, a lot more things become possible. So.
Okay. So you're contradicting yourself.
Oh, good.
Because 1 minute you're telling me that I can't do all this and, I got to hire these people. And the next minute you turn around and say, we built our own ad management system because
Eli built our ad management system. I can tell Eli what to do really well.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you didn't do it. All right. So that makes me feel
do anything.
So why would you build your own ad management system when there's so many out there?
Because I'm offended. I'm offended at the whole goddamn thing. And I take some level of personal responsibility for this because we did the first advertising on the internet ever in 1992. So to the extent that internet advertising is my fault, I apologize. Google has yet to say thank you, though. But the problem is that, most, and this is not necessarily true of like WordPress plugins that would do ad management for you, but certainly if you get into using DoubleClick for publishers or any of the kind of the networks out there where you just put a little JavaScript on your site and we'll serve ads for you. The amount of tracking that these things are doing is insane, obnoxious, I think irrelevant. I think it's really not actually doing anything useful. And it's just offensive. When it comes right down to it, this is an Apple publication, right? We publish Apple stuff. Stuff that ads that should run on the TidBITS website should be of interest, should be related to Apple technology or at least internet technology. That's it. Nothing more. That's how a magazine would work, right? If you're reading Macworld, you don't see ads for bras because that's not why people read Macworld. It doesn't work that way. Magazines take ads that are relevant to their audience, and all this personalization nonsense and whatnot, I don't care. I don't want anyone seeing ads for crud on the TidBITS website because that reflects badly on me. And so many websites out there are just so ugly now because they've got 17 ads on the page. Half of them are quote unquote personalized, which means they've decided that, I once bought underwear, so now I want to see underwear ads for the rest of my life. They've figured out that you can actually click a little button somewhere and say, "Do not show me this ad again, you moron." But nonetheless, you just get a lot of truly cruddy ads because the personalization doesn't even work very well. If you go on a trip, you have you're searching for stuff, trip-related stuff. Going to London sometime this summer. I search on that. All of a sudden, I'm seeing ads for stuff about London. Well, that might be fine now, but it's not going to be fine once I get back. They don't know I've gotten back. They don't know when I've gone. I don't ever want to see that stuff after I get back. It's just stupid. They can't know enough to make it useful, and so it ends up being worse than if it was just targeted to the topic. If I'm on a technology publication, show me technology ads. That's what I probably want to see. And so that's kind of big story about why we're not doing the kind of the major surrounding things. So the next question is, why didn't we just use a plugin? And what it came down to was they did way more than we needed. They were too complicated. One of the things that Eli, as a developer, he has the luxury of saying, this will actually make the site less secure, slower, cruftier. It has all these other problems than something I can write myself. So he said basically, look, I can do this for you and have it do exactly what you want and no more. And it will be easier for you to manage. It will be, again, lighter weight, higher performance, more secure. And so that's why we built our own. And so that's been kind of the big reason behind it. The other thing is that we decided we dislike ads enough, particularly these algorithmic ones, that we wanted some of the ads to be fun. And so, we've got the ads are, the problem with the, doing the code yourself is you have to make sure like it works the way you want it. And so there's like tweaking, weightings and things like that because stuff is hard. But one of the categories that we have, I did some ads that are Steve Jobs quotes because I can. It's my site. I can have anything on it I want. If people are going to be banner blind and not see those, I don't care. If they do see it, hey, maybe I got a slight smile out of them for something because they see a cool Steve Jobs quote. We can do ads that are basically pointers to really great TidBITS articles of yesteryear. Stuff that's is totally relevant still, but no one sees because it's back in the archives 4 years. And we can do ads for the Take Control books because we want to. Those are our author friends. We want to support them, and so we can do anything we want now with a little bit more control over it without having to kind of get into this all this tracking and stats and this and that and the other thing. We don't care. It's it's a graphical element on the site. Something I want to do once I find a little bit more free time is there's an app called Hype, which actually comes in set apps. So it's $9.99 a month setup subscription, so it's basically free for that. And Hype is an HTML5 editor. It can make interactive HTML5 blocks. And so I'm actually going to try creating some so-called ads that are basically quizzes. I did all of these Mac Tech Conference game show questions of, so when was the iPhone announced? That was always one of our test questions. Is it 2007 or 2010? And, it'll be something that you can actually answer and tell you whether you got it right or wrong. It can flip over. I mean, as this is all theoretical, but I'm pretty sure it can be done. And we designed the system to be able to handle it. So, so that was one of those situations where, again, just let's retake the concept of ads back from belly fat and all the one weird trick nonsense. It's just such garbage.
Yeah, the idea. I mean, I've played with a lot of the plugins, and one of my complaints about some of this stuff is that just like certain programs on personal computers on laptops, they end up being bloated because the authors keep wanting to do, well, I can do this, I can add this function, I can add that function. At some point, go make a new one, and just leave this one alone. Let it do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, and then that's it. Because that to me would be...
That was exactly what Eli said. He's like, yeah, we could install this one and it might do what you want, but it will also do, 15,000 other things that you don't want that will make it harder to use.
Right. And you can't turn them off.
Nope. Can't turn them off. Right, yeah. Precisely. So, so as it's, we'll see. We're feeling our way into all of this, that this really is a new system for us too. And we had to guess at what we wanted in certain cases. We didn't know that this was going to be the best way to do something. And we're finding, gee, does the navigation bar in the site do what we want now that we're actually using it day in and day out? That's an interesting question. I don't know. But once all the big stuff settles down, then we can kind of loop back and go, okay, what small changes, do we want to put into place now that we've seen how people are interacting and what kind of comments we're getting? One of the most interesting ones that we've been getting, actually, which I don't quite know what to do with yet, is that people are complaining about the information density. So the new site is very wide and open. We don't have, the font's fairly large. There's white space, the line spacing's, fairly large to make it easy to read. But as a result, you have to scroll a little bit more to see as much. Is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? I mean, it's meant to be more readable. And people are like, I want to see more. I was like, well, I could make it so you could see more, but what would I put there? Yes, if I had a sidebar down the left or a sidebar down the right, there'd be more stuff on screen. But is it useful stuff? Is it stuff that you want? Is it stuff that you can interact with in a helpful fashion? And no one's really said yet, oh yes, here's what you should do. And actually no one said that at all. People are just like, I think the information density should be higher. And every time I say, yes, but what should I put there? They go silent. Because as a lot of sites, will just fill up every inch of the page with stuff. Maybe it's links to older articles, or add boxes running down the side, or a whole lot of navigation. Why? If it's not actually helping people, why? Why is it there? We hid a lot of stuff in menus because one of the few useful bits of analytics that we had from our old site was that we had a left-hand sidebar with all the sections. We had categories. People didn't use them at all. Just didn't. That we don't publish enough. We're publishing 3 to 15 articles per week. Well, really 5 to 15 articles per week. So, and they bounce around in categories. So you can't just say, oh, I'm only interested in Mac stuff and go there. No one, as it turns out, does that, because we might not write anything about the Mac for a week or two. It's not a useful thing. or more likely we wouldn't write anything about the Apple TV for a week or two, or 5 weeks or something. So like categories turns out don't make a lot of sense as a major navigational approach for a site of our volume. Yeah. So if you're, I don't know, Reddit or something like that, yeah, you probably want to have some major navigational. I mean, I don't know, I don't use Reddit, so I don't know, but something that has a lot of topics and that the topics are important. So the topics are either important or completely irrelevant, one or the other. For us, probably if you read TidBITS, you probably want to read most of what we write. Yeah. And so we've erred on that side. That said, one of the cool things that we've gotten out of WordPress also is tags. And so if you go to the bottom of any article now, you will see some little blue boxes with categories and tags in them, and clicking one of those will take you to that appropriate collection. And it's not super helpful yet because we just started, obviously. So old articles will have, everything will have categories, but for the actual tags, which are more interesting, we just haven't tagged that many articles yet. We can only go back so far so quickly, and so we're putting much effort into that right now.
And tagging is, tagging is just one more thing you have to do before you publish. Yep. But it aids in the discoverability. If you, depending on who you listen to, it helps with the Google juice. So, at some point it's like, okay, it's just one more thing I have to do. Yep. If I want this article or this edition of MacVoices or whatever to be found, that you just got to do it.
And actually, again, I sort of like doing it. And, one thing that I think people don't quite internalize at this point. It used to be everyone thought that I wrote everything in TidBITS, which has never been or hasn't been true for 30 years. No, not 30 years, 25 years, 24 years, something like that. But everything absolutely does go through my head. And especially now when it's a new system, I have to be aware of what everything looks like, and are we making kind of systemic mistakes? Do we need to make a change, et cetera, et cetera? And so I've been doing a lot of the tagging, and it's kind of an interesting exercise, right? How many tags are useful? And I look at some of the tags that other people have created, and I'm like, that's not useful. No one would ever like. We're doing an article about, I'm blanking on what it was about specifically, but the tag was details. It was about the article was about really tweaky little details in something. And the tag was details. That's a useless tag. No one will ever say, I want to know more about details. That's but it's not, I'm not criticizing, it's just one of those things where it's an interesting exercise to think about an article and say, what are the actual useful tags and how many should there be? Because, if you've got 20 of them, not helpful. Once you're over 5, probably not helpful. That you really need to sit and say, what are the key concepts or nouns or whatever that are being covered here and are not already handled by the categories. So, we have a security category. So if the article is about security, of course it would go in the security category, but that means you don't apply a security tag to it as well. So little things like that. But it's an interesting intellectual challenge.
Definitely. Okay, to wrap this one up, I kind of saved the big one for the last.
Ooh.
Because when you launched the new site, you love it, yeah. When you launched the new site, I launched it, and it's like, okay, the first thing that hit me and slapped me in the face is a brand new TidBITS logo.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, wow. First of all, it's purple.
Go all in. Come on.
Well, go all in, but that's your brand identity, and that your logo has stood for a long, long time. I love.
Actually not.
No,
not really. Nope. We've had 5 logos.
Really?
Over the years. Yeah, you haven't seen most of them because a number of them predate the web in significant ways.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So no, we've had a number of logos, and the last one, Jeff Carlson designed, and it was again very much a product of the 2000s, and designed for that website. And it was not designed in isolation as a logo. Didn't work real well at a lot of different sizes and shapes and things like that. So this new logo is actually much closer to the one that we always liked the best, which can't quite describe it. It looked great on a business card because it was a business card logo. Again, predates the web, right? So it had the business card was white on the left and purple on the right, and the TID was black and the BITS was white. I think that's right. Maybe it's the other way around. In any event, I have to go find an old one. But the point was, it was a big, dark, strong font, and it had that huge, the BITS was all capitalized, and a huge color change. And the problem was that the BITS needed to be reversed out of purple for it to work, and that was hard on the web because you had to have your logo somehow in a block, right? Or have the logo somehow in a block that it has never worked. I mean, we I don't know if you ever remember the torn paper look. We had a torn paper look at some point.
Forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was of how to get that one to work, where it was this kind of standalone thing, but we had the torn paper off to the side, and we could put headlines in the torn paper. Any event. So this new logo, we worked with a guy named Jeff Allen, his website is funisok.com. And he is absolutely brilliant. He is a wonderful, wonderful logo designer. And man, is he knows what he's doing. He knows how to listen to what you want and sort of give you options that you can then sort of, work your way down the path to something that you actually like at the end. And so yeah, totally new logo. Get used to it.
Oh no, don't misunderstand. I love it. It just it surprised me. Did Joe Kissel have anything to do with the purple?
No.
Okay.
We've liked purple from long before we've known Joe.
Okay. I just wondered because that was
our purple predates Joe's purple. Just saying.
Yeah.
He's actually older than we are, so I can't really say that. But we've been using purple as the TidBITS colors for many, many years. I mean, again, it goes back to, I don't know. It goes way back.
Okay.
Every logo has in some ways had purple in it. Every site design has some ways had purple in it.
Even the last one? Did it have purple?
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
I mean, it's a little bit more of like the I don't know, like aubergine purple from Slack, if you've seen that.
Okay.
You can see it if you go to the old site is still completely accessible for another few days anyway. If you go to https://sparky.tidbits.com. Apparently my Let's Encrypt certificate is expired, which I'm not surprised by. But you'll see, a lot of purple there.
Okay. It's funny how once you take something away, it's like, because I saw the orange part more than anything, I guess.
Yeah. Sort of like the taupe or, I don't know, like grayish, brownish, outside that you tend to see. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the old site, it's almost more of like that Star Trek console approach.
Yes.
Everything's got to sort of look like it's in a box, and it's got rounded corners and this and that and the other thing. And I got nothing. I'm not criticizing it. At the time we loved it.
Oh sure.
And it was just more that, while you look at it now, you're like, ooh, that's kind of old looking, and not in a good way. Although we did have someone who said that he liked the old site because it had become retro. I was like, oh man, not updating something long enough that it's become retro.
Yeah, it goes like cars. They go from junkers and everything to all of a sudden now we need to finish them off in cherry apple or candy apple red or whatever.
But fins are coming back, man. I'm telling you, fins are coming back.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure fins ever really went out. They just stopped making them. So. Adam, what would you say? This too is completely subjective and really not useful. But hey, what the heck? What's your favorite part of the new site? And you can answer that from a user perspective or a back end perspective.
Well, so from my personal perspective, I'm really liking Discourse, which is the discussion system, and that's because, as you know, I'm a little bit of a control freak, just a little bit. And it really bugs me when people have typos in their posts, or really bad subject lines, or they post in the wrong place, or it just bugs me. So I can change all that in Discourse. anything in discourse that someone else posts, I can change. I can move it. I can, if someone puts something in the wrong topic, I can make it its own topic. I can put it in some other topic. I can change the heading. I can actually go in and edit the post. There was a perfect example. Someone posted something. He was asking about making a website that had a photo gallery, and he said he's an amateur, so he didn't want something hard. But later on, he apparently mistyped amateur, and it got auto-corrected to aperture. And I was reading quickly, and so I didn't quite parse. I didn't, parse the fact that the word had somehow been switched. And so I, in my reply, I said something about how, you're really not going to find anything that works with aperture at this point. But people are still using it. Don't get me.
Sure, yeah.
But you're really not gonna find that. And someone else commented, "Oh, he just had a typo." You're in your reply. I given other information, so it wasn't like my entire thing was pointless. But someone else pointed this out, and we're like, "Oh, well, that's embarrassing." I went back. I edited his original. I deleted deleted those chunks out of my post. Deleted the post that it was telling me that I'd made a mistake. Much better, right? Like no one needs to read the discussion of the typo. And no, I can't do that ad infinitum. You've seen the XKCD. There's an error on the internet. I must go.
Yeah.
But if I'm looking at it, it's now a click or two for me to fix something. And, no, it isn't a big deal. I'm sure I'm sure no one notices, except for the fact that hopefully people do notice that on TidBITS, things are usually spelled right. The grammar is a little better than normal. Our articles are professionally edited, more so than many other places. And even our discussions hopefully are higher quality than the norm because, one, we have higher quality commenters. Thank you very much, folks. But also, if I see something like that, I'll fix it. Does that make us more money? No, probably not. But, there are people who just do appreciate things being cleaner and more correct and having fewer mistakes. So that's, I think, my personal little, oh boy, just scratches an itch,
Yeah.
And when we had TidBITS Talk in Mailman, and someone would send something that had, an egregious typo in the subject line, I had to look at that egregious typo in the subject line for the entire life of the damn thread. Every message that came in, like, that hurts.
Okay.
So yeah, I can just fix it now. And so that I think is going to be a good thing. Although I guess if I do fix a typo in a subject, the people who do interact via email will break their threading. But hey, can't have everything. So that said, I am actually really fond of the new logo. I really like the font Proxima Nova. It's a really pretty font, and just having some of the pretty aspects. Like having the watch list icons. I love the watch list icons. We do this, icons for software that's been updated. It's all Mac software, and so we suck out the 1024 by 1024 icon and use that for the post. And so it looks brilliant because developers do great icons. And it's pretty. We've got it in a horizontal list, so it's not taking up much space on our site. And I think, honestly, much as this is all about journalism and helping the reader and everything, these developers, half of them are my friends anyway. If this helps promote their product in a very small way because their icon is out there, representing them, cool. I'm happy about that.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Adam Engst, control freak. So,
guilty as charged.
Yes. Adam, I tell you though, seriously, congratulations. Our schedules couldn't be put together. I was hoping to do this a little bit closer to the time, but I also know you had a lot of things to do, getting it out and making sure it was running, and then that we only were able to put the schedules together now. But I also wanted to make sure we talked to you about it. I think it doesn't matter what kind of website. A lot of us are putting up different types of websites for different purposes. And you obviously have a lot more sophistication behind yours, but it kind of gives us a peek into some of the things maybe we should all think about a little bit in looking at our websites and making plans to do the next revision or launch the next site.
And one thing I will say is that I think every site is different, that we are really a publication. And many websites are more or less, business cards or brochures. They're sort of the expanded business card, expanded brochure. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a totally legitimate type of website. But the needs of that sort of website are very different from what we're going through. And so, I think that one of the big lessons to keep in mind is that you really need to think about what the purpose of your site is. And part of the reason why we had as much trouble as we do is that we're in the awkward middle, right? If you're a blogger and you publish once a week or even once or twice a week, that's different. That's easy. There's lots of themes in WordPress and whatnot that will do that just fine. If you're the New York Times, on the other hand, or USA Today, you're publishing tens of articles a day. 20, 30, 50, 100 articles a day. That's a very different design need. And if you look at the New York Times website, you can see it's a very, very different site. We're publishing, 1 to 3 articles a day. So, we have different needs, and that seems to be an unusual size. You really don't find designs that are built around that. So, I hope we've come up with one that works. And, as I said, people seem to be more concerned about scrolling than I thought. I scroll a lot. Scrolling doesn't bother me, but apparently maybe I'm unusual because I really hate stuff that goes like left, right, or you've got to click to reload pages or whatnot. I mean, scrolling for me works just fine. I'm perfectly happy to scroll, but that may be one of the things that we look at tweaking a little bit is to see like getting more above the fold for the people who apparently aren't going to scroll.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the challenges, too, of designing because there was a time that the screen resolution was kind of standard and you knew exactly where the fold would fall. And now the fold falls a lot different on a 4 or 5K iMac than it does even on a Retina display iPhone. Yeah. And so, it makes you crazy. And then now see, you're going to take me off on a rant.
Yes.
Because some of the theme designers, they love to have the big, gorgeous picture at the very top. And it's like, okay, yeah, that is gorgeous, but that has nothing to do with why I loaded the site. I need the navigation. I need to know where, if you're not going to give me what I want right there, I need to be able to get to where I want to go. And instead, I'm looking at kind of useless, pretty pictures. And okay, fine.
So one of the things that we did actually for that reason is that our articles don't have to have featured images. They format just fine if they don't. But most of them have so far because we're trying to go there just to see how that works. But so what we've done though is the sort of metadata of the article, so the author, the date, how many comments there are, and the title go in a black bar or a dark gray bar that's overlaid over the image. It's translucent. Again, this is CSS magic. I mean, this is all programmatic that this can happen. And so what that does is, yes, we have the big image. Yes, it takes up the top half of the screen, even on a big screen. But it's also trying to use the space as efficiently as possible so that, if I had everything like that below the image, or like I had the title, then the image, then the text, you'd sort of everything would be separated out much more. So there is a lot of thought that goes into how to do those things appropriately, and we'll see. Maybe we're doing it well, maybe we're not. Like with the watch list items, which only have the icon, we actually just do the icon small and in the upper left, rather than doing it big in the center like all the other featured images, because it's an icon. Once you see it at full size, it's a little embarrassing. We're like, whoa, that's a little much. Bring it down. And so so there's a lot of different things we can do there, and we'll see. we may stop doing featured images as much after a while, because if it's just extra work and no one appreciates it, then yeah, let's not bother. But on the other hand, boy, they look kind of nice, and
well, we operate in a visual medium
right.
now, and so you almost if you were just publishing text articles, I don't think that would really fly.
Nope. And you look at the sites that really like focused on that kind of stuff, like Medium, for instance. They still often really have those images. But here's the other thing, actually, and this is, you want to get another little bit of a rat hole. Social media. So if someone posts a link to one of our articles now on Facebook or Twitter, there's a really good image that goes with it. Now, I haven't yet really looked into if this has changed our social media traffic, for getting more links from social media, more click-throughs from social media. But one of the things that we did do was we put 3 little tiny buttons to the left side of an article, and they actually scroll with the article. So, because of course you're only going to use them once you're at the bottom of the article. There's a Facebook, a Twitter, and a Reddit icon. And we have analytics on those. And you know what? I think they're going to be going away. No one clicks them. I didn't really think people were going to click them, but boy, everyone wants to tell you that social media is the future, man, along with plastics. And so, I had to have my social media icons there because, social media consultants would say you should do that. And I didn't actually believe it back then. I don't believe it now. And now I have stats to prove it. So, I'm going to let it go at some amount longer so that I feel like I've given it a fair test. And then I think I'm going to take them off. Because when I share something on social media, I copy the URL and I paste it into wherever I'm going. I don't click their little buttons. I don't know. I mean, it seems wrong. And, I've actually had a couple of people say, are there trackers on those? Like, no, they're just static images. There are no trackers on our site. Closest you get is we have Google Analytics. We have to have Google Analytics so we know what people are doing on the site. That's it. But there are no other trackers of any sort. It keeps the site fast and I would say private. Not that anyone should care that anyone's reading tidbits, but like just reading tidbits. You don't need to be tracked. But that's one of those things where, yeah, we thought it might be an interesting idea. We can test it. We can take it away.
Okay, so folks, everybody go out to TidBITS and click those icons and share the particles. First of all, it'll let them share, but it'll also drive them nuts. So.
Yeah. So in any event, but similarly, actually, one of the things I was just looking at the homepage while we were talking, and there's this issue with above the fold, because the problem is you don't know where it hits, and so if you have there's a concept called the false bottom. So if it hits right at the bottom of some easy spot, so people can't see there's more, they won't scroll. They'll think they're seeing everything. And what I was just reflecting is I'll bet we could put some kind of a little like down pointing arrow or something that implies there's more stuff that scrolls with, just like those little social media icons scroll, that always stays at the bottom of the page until you hit the bottom of the page when you're really there. That might be an interesting approach. It could even have a little up and down one. So an up one appeared, at the top when, after you'd scrolled down. So you knew you were at the, you knew you're, anyway. That's the kind of thing that, again, I cannot imagine how Eli does it. He's magic. And, but I can come up with the idea and he will either do it or tell me that it's really, really hard. At which point we often don't do it.
Yeah.
But a lot of that stuff, he's like, yeah, no problem. He just does it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, now that you're off of this bandwagon, we got to get you back more to talk about just Apple stuff. But I was really anxious to talk to you about this. Because I wanted to
shut everything down while I was busy.
But I really wanted to get inside your head, especially after I saw the redesign, because I have this much of an idea of how much work it had to be, and so that's why I'm particularly interested in it. Just what the thought processes were and all.
Yeah.
So, tidbits.com, go check it out. Check out the news. Sign up for the newsletter if you're not a subscriber, and I can't believe you're not. See what that looks like, and congratulate Adam on a job well done.
Thank you.
And tell him what you like and what you don't like, because he may change it.
I seriously, and I will say, click the Get TidBITS menu, because one of the things you'll see there is you actually can get tidbits in a whole bunch of different ways. We think about the website, we think about the email newsletter, but Apple News, Facebook, RSS, podcasts, Twitter, all that's available. And so if there are just ways that you prefer to get information, I'm actually thinking about doing Flipboard. We can do Flipboard now, and Flipboard's kind of cool. I've seen it before, and like, oh, okay, maybe I'll do Flipboard. And so, going back to the very earliest days of TidBITS, one of our prime directives was to make TidBITS as available as possible. That's why we were on CompuServe and AOL and Delphi and Bix and Genie and every one of the online services. And this is sort of the modern version of that, is that we want to try to make TidBITS as available as we can, however people wish to read it.
Well, there you go. And just I will weigh in. I publish MacVoices Magazine on Flipboard, and I still think it is the best visual presentation on especially on the iPad.
Yeah,
because
Apple News is doing well with their articles. It's not doing very well with our watch list items. I actually have it as a separate category in Apple News because all the icons are square, and sometimes it just biffs them. It really wants a rectangle, and it just doesn't. It cuts them off weirdly and things like that. Like, there's nothing I can do. I really don't have any control over this. I'll do a Flipboard magazine. We'll see how that looks too, and I'll put it in the menu. So.
Yeah. Sounds good. Adam, we'll get you back here again soon. Thanks so much for the time, as always.
Thank you.
All right. Congratulations again. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. Check out tidbits.com. Check out the Mac Voices magazine so you get an idea of what Adam will be bringing when he brings tidbits to Flipboard. Check out all of our other shows at macvoices.com. As always, thanks for watching. Visit macvoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Mac Voices Facebook group and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices and join these folks who help keep Mac Voices coming to you. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.